We are so back. Westeros is back, and it is darker than ever. Spoiler warning, I don't know why you would click on a video titled this if you are worried about spoilers. I'm going to be talking about the episode, I'm going to be talking about Game of Thrones, and of course I'm going to be talking about the books. So you've been warned. Keep that in there. One thing that I cannot get enough of from this show is the fact that it's able to fully recreate the setting from the books. After actually reading them and rewatching all 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, it is really nice to see a proper budget put on these scenes. In season 1, 2, and 3, you can really tell they were really thin with the budget. This, for example, is a royal hunt from season 1 of Game of Thrones, and then this is a royal hunt from House of the Dragon. But I don't want to spend too much time comparing the two shows, because even though they are from the same author and same setting, the shows are very different in their goals and styles. Game of Thrones is Martin basically taking very stereotypical archetypes from fantasy series, mainly from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and basically putting a hammer to them, destroying them, recontextualizing them into a different setting. Even in that show, you still see a lot of individuals who are good, a lot of individuals that have proper motivations, different perspectives on war, religion, and politics, while Hot D is pure politics, but with dragons. Even the marketing is in on the gag a little bit here. They make you choose a color, they make you choose a side, and even though the limited 2 candidates, the 2 sides of this show, they're both pretty bad and will lead to the suffering of millions of people, you still have to choose. Stop me if you've heard this one before. But let's get into the details of the episode. One thing that I really liked about season 2, at least this first episode, I hope they maintain this throughout the season, is how there wasn't a gigantic time jump. Season 1 was all jumping all over the place. They were jumping months ahead, years ahead, and that's because they had to build that generational hatred, that generational resentment between the 2 sides. But I'm glad that this season seems to be taking a more regularly paced story structure, episode structure. Love seeing the Night's Watch not completely falling apart or rotting. Something that other characters have mentioned in the past is the fact that people would just join the Night's Watch just because it was like an honorable thing to do. And this show really shows that. It shows how expansive it was. It shows how big it used to be, how royal people would just join because they could rise in the ranks. You know, it was something to do instead of being a punishment. Craig and Stark talking to Jaehaerys, I fell in love with Craig and Stark right away. The Starks are too likable. It sucks that they are just terrible at politics. If they knew how to lie a little bit, manipulate a little bit, the world would be a much better place. Of course, that would ruin the point of their characters in the first place. They're good to a fault. That's the whole point of their characters. But I really like this interaction he had with Jaehaerys, talking about the conquest of Westeros, sharing their personal histories, their family histories. It really makes the world feel really lived in, and it's the nerdy stuff that I just love eating up. And there is a lot of it in this episode. The Dance of the Dragons has only just begun, and so there's a lot of talk about allies, strategy, and where some of the major and smaller houses are going to fall when it comes to allegiances. Which I'm hoping to see maybe some of the more minor houses, a lot more of the smaller houses, now that I feel like most people have gotten used to the major houses of Westeros. These smaller houses are really interesting because they have very specific histories, very specific cultural things, and it's usually the most interesting part is seeing some of these smaller characters leverage some of the major events, because they're usually less corrupt, they're less evil, more likable because they're more regular folk. Don't get me wrong, the reason why I like this show is because every character is evil to a certain degree. The only characters that you can even kind of claim innocence at all are the kids, and since they grow up with morally questionable people around them, they usually end up just as bad as their adult counterparts, or sometimes even worse. But the simple fact that we still like a lot of these characters, like Aegon for example, just a horrible brat, just shows how good the acting is, and the fact that seeing someone's life from their perspective instantly makes us more sympathetic for them and root for them, even though they're not deserving of it. They're actually bad people. Aemond is one of my favorite characters and a perfect example of this. Bro literally looks like a supervillain, but since we saw him struggle as a kid, we saw him do something brave, something cool, we root for him even though he is one of the more evil characters. I've seen people talking about how he should be king over his brother Aegon, and while that's probably true, that's not saying much. Aegon is probably one of the worst characters to become king. He's definitely not my first choice, but Aemond is a bloodthirsty maniac that feels the need to prove his greatness through violence. Not exactly someone you want being king. He's not exactly perfect king material. And that's another thing that this show is trying to tell us. It's constantly reminding us of that the Targaryens are not deserving of the Iron Throne. They do not rule because they are good people, because they're the smartest people, because they're the most fit to lead. They lead because they have dragons. They have the might and the charisma to manipulate the population to have control over them. They do not rule because they have some kind of divine right or because they deserve it. They rule because they're able to convince people with their power and prestige, which is something that is a common running theme in media this year.
Listen, Argonne!
But let's talk about the ending, the biggest moment of the episode, something you've probably already heard of. It's probably already been spoiled to you, but the ending has these two characters in the book. They're called Blood and Cheese. They go to King's Landing to assassinate Aemond, which Rhaenyra wants to take revenge for what he did to her son Luke at the end of season 1. They get there, they can't find Aemond, but they find the queen and her 2 twins, and they say, good enough. They unalive one of the kids, and while this moment is really brutal and it is really soul-crushing, I do feel like this is one of the things I didn't like about the episode, because it felt like just kind of like shock value. In the book, they make the mother choose, and the kids are aware of her choice. And I feel like this takes something that could just be major shock value and it turns it into character tension. It adds weight to the choices of this person. While the show does that a little bit, I feel like they kind of missed an opportunity that the book kind of lowballed for them. But besides that, I've really enjoyed this episode. Overall, fantastic. Love seeing morally questionable characters do morally questionable things. The depth of these characters and their personalities are really amazing to see. The writers don't have much to go off because the book is just more of a historical retelling. So they do have to fill in the blanks when it comes to how these people are and how they would act. And I think they do a fantastic job here, fleshing out the personalities of these people and making them feel like actual living, breathing people. Also, I can't believe how good the CGI is with these dragons. They look fantastic. Honestly, these CGI artists are spoiling us. I'm really excited for these next few episodes. I feel like the dragons are going to be the highlight of many of these episodes just by how fantastic and realistic they're going to go with the special effects. And that's all I have to say about that. I don't know if I'll do each individual episode like this in a video. I'm not sure if each episode will have something to talk about as much as this episode did. But I do want to do an overall kind of review / analysis of the season. I do feel like this show has very unique themes and things that it's doing with the politics, something I would want to go more in depth with in a broader sense instead of individually in each episode. But if it's going the way I'm predicting, I would love to talk about some of the things that make the show unique and special in my heart. But that's it for me. Subscribe, like, you know the deal, you know the drill. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you soon. Godspeed.